I want to speak on what loneliness really sort of is. And honestly, I wanted to speak more on the fact that people are more focused on loneliness than not. So, what do I mean by that? I mean that they obviously, when you're experiencing loneliness, it's very isolating and you're living through it. So, it's more relevant to you. And, obviously, when you're in the moment, you're thinking short term, you're not really thinking long term. You're thinking about, oh, how does it feel right now? How does it feel tomorrow? You're not really thinking about in comparison, right? And so let me just jump into it. So, in terms of the comparison, right? So, say you're lonely right now, which a lot of men are. Um, Maybe you don't have any partners, maybe you don't have any friends, or very few, or very sparse partners in between, and you're experiencing loneliness, or you want to know what it's like for a man to be lonely. And quite honestly, yeah, obviously you do have days where you're like, what would it be like if I had a partner or a kids or whatever it may be, right? And the house is quiet, or you don't really have anyone to talk to. And I could go into more and more. But as I said, if you think of the contrary, it's honestly, there's a lot of bad things to having that could have been wrong, right? So if you're lonely, it sort of affects you, but it's not like, I don't want to say super detrimental, because obviously people get very depressed about this. But when you think of what could be wrong, right, instead of like what's going on right now, the possibility of you entering a relationship and it's just being completely toxic, it doesn't really click in your mind of just how bad that is until you're in that situation. And so when you think about it, like toxicity in relationships, whether it be physical or emotional, you come to realize that when you're in that type of relationship, it is so much better to be lonely or to not have anyone. And if you come at it from a Christian perspective, we do have Proverbs and Psalms. I don't even know if you've heard any, but King Solomon, right, which is the wisest king, at least in the Christian perspective, he even had Proverbs that were, here, I'll just quote one. Well, paraphrase, because I don't know the exact quote, but you can find it, right? Just type it in, what I'm about to share. And it says, it's better to be alone than with a quarrelsome wife. Or, as I said, this is speaking on a men's sort of perspective, because I have no idea what it's like being on the other side. But he also mentions that, having a quarrelsome wife or whatever partner, eats away at you. It slowly poisons and destroys you. And honestly, I've seen it firsthand of just how bad it is for a husband when his wife is just constantly nagging or bringing him down, and there's nothing that he can really do about it, right? And obviously there's the option of therapy, but then she has to agree to that. And so you have this situation where he can't really turn to his friends or family, since they're, there's a lot of jokes in the male sort of space where, if a wife is yelling or constantly nagging at you every day, it's almost like a common sort of a theme in marriage for everyone. And I'm not saying that's a call for divorce, but I'm just saying that it does eat away at you slowly. When you have no one to turn to, you just kind of have to tough it out. And, there is no aspect of improvement. If there's no sort of improvement, it's just going to get worse and worse and worse, unfortunately. Or at the very least, it's going to stay the same and you're just going to be miserable every day. You have problems at work and now you have problems at home. There's no rest in between. And so, obviously being lonely, there's a lot of problems with that, right? We're social creatures and we're supposed to sort of have interactions. As introverted as you may be, I'm an introvert myself, but obviously there are some times when I have to reach out to people just to have a little bit of human interaction. And so I do want to give that sort of contrary, because everyone always talks about loneliness, And yes, it's bad, but they don't talk about the opposite side of which could happen, right? If you're so desperate for a relationship, it's not worth entering a toxic one, and especially marrying into one. All right. And so part of the reason I brought this up is due to the fact that I've seen this sort of happen to one of my relatives recently, where they were alone for a bit and now they're in this relationship and it's toxic for them. You can see it. You don't even have to hear about it from either of them. Just them being in the same room together and being at the party together, you can clearly see the dynamic between them, and it's not healthy. And so I come to think about it, and he's obviously, we all have free will, but I want to talk to him about it, but I can't really, right? It's one of those things where what are you gonna say? Hey, I think it's better if you're gonna be alone, right? Obviously, he knows his situation way better than I do, but I'm just speaking in terms of giving that fresh perspective, because you hear on the news, you hear different YouTubers, and they always focus on the loneliness aspect, but they don't focus on, the degrading daily sort of, oops, apologies, that was a text. But anyways, they don't talk about the daily degradation or the sort of life being sucked out of them. And when you're lonely, you do kind of have that, but not as much. Just to summarize, being lonely isn't the absolute worst thing. It is really bad, and obviously people fall into depressive states about it. But think of the contrary too. Don't be so desperate to search for a relationship that you find a toxic one and think that it's better than being lonely, because many times it's not, and in fact it's worse. And so just think about it overall. It's even from a Christian perspective, it's often better to just be alone than to be with a quarrelsome wife. And I do hope that if you're really craving that relationship, may God guide you to one. But also don't focus too much on it. Just remember that not every relationship is all sunshine and rainbows, and it comes with problems as well. I'm sure if you've had a relationship before and you don't have one now, it was for a reason, right? It wasn't just for, the heck of it. Anyways, thanks y'all. See y'all.